Grow, Sell, and Retire is the podcast for the lazy overachiever. B.D. Dalton, author of True Gravity and Grow, Sell, and Retire, is here to give you his 25 years of secrets, tips, and systems to take your business to the next level. This is your chance to find out what is working in sales, marketing, and running your business. If you stop learning, you stop burning. Now, here's your host, BD, with today's GSR podcast.
Hey, Grow, Sell, and Retire listeners. This is BD Dalton, getting ready to talk to Jessica MMcGregor Johnson, talking about life after you retire. This is my Grow, Sell, and Retire and Inspire podcast with Jessica MMcGregor Johnson. Jessica, welcome on the program.
Thank you. Lovely to be with you.
Cool. So we both are co-authors on Retire Inspire. And it's funny because I've been dealing with retired people for the last 25 years as a financial advisor and business owner and things like that. And people don't always have a happy retirement, do they, Jessica?
No, they don't. And I think it's a lot of the time because they haven't really thought about it, or they've got this kind of weird dreamlike idea. But it's a good thing to think about before you even get there, really. And
people don't, because they think retirement is just something that happens to them and not something that they can plan for, adjust for, deal with. You know, it's just it doesn't just happen on that day, does it? It doesn't end. It's the beginning of the next phase.
Yeah, and I think what I see is interesting is that a lot of people, because they don't plan, they kind of get there and they go, well, now what? And they don't know who to be, who they are, you know, what they want out of the next 20, 30 years of life even, maybe more, depending on when they're retiring. And it's really it's a shock for some people. And they feel very kind of rudderless in life, I would say.
And that's crazy for people that actually, a lot of these people ran companies or were managerial positions and ran stuff on a daily basis. But they ran stuff and you asked the question, who am I? And at that point in their life, who they were was that manager or that person or that salesperson or whatever it was. That was who they are. It wasn't, who they are forever. It was just who they are at that point in time. So when you ask people, who am I, or get them to say that to themselves, what do people come up with?
Well, there's a kind of blank look to begin with, because if you take away all those normal things, you know, if you think about it, you're asked that question, what do you do all your life? And that becomes who you are. And then you take away that and they go, I've never thought about that question before. They've never actually thought about it, because I think a lot of the time we go through life not necessarily always making conscious choices about what we do. We do the next thing. We take the next promotion. We go in the direction that everybody else seems to be going. And rarely do we stop and actually go, well, who am I and what do I really want out of life? And that can be a really challenging question for people. Really challenging, because they can't just use the same old answers they've always used.
And that's crazy, because we get answers for everything. You could find answers on the internet for nearly anything, from fixing something to doing something else. But interpersonal questions, or looking at your spiritualists or anything else in your body or who you are, you don't find those answers on the internet. And that's you can't Google that. You can Google it, but you're not going to get your answers. You're going to get a bunch of different things that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a few different levels with the question, who am I? And the first level for me is that who am I in the terms of the role that I'm going to play in my life and in everybody else's life. And that changes when you retire, because you no longer play that role as the CEO or the salesperson or whoever you've been, but you're playing a different role in life. And it's kind of working out what role that is. And the thing is that you have absolute choice. And I think the hard thing of this is that you've got a blank canvas in a way. And, you know, if you talk to any artist, it's like, what's the most scary thing? The blank canvas. Oh my God, I can put anything on there. And it's like, actually, yeah, you can. And it's finding a way to actually answer that question for yourself of like, what roles do I want to play in the world, in my life, in other people's life for the next 20, 30 years? And that's a good question to start with when you start looking at who am I, like the who part of it, because it's like that gives you something to kind of hang your hat on a bit. And so people can start to kind of calm down and feel a little more calm about the question. It's like, oh, okay, I've got to find something that I want to do in this world. I want to find something that's a role that I want to be. And sometimes, I mean, I look at my brother, for example. One of his roles, not all of them, is that he's turned into a fabulous grandfather because he's got time now. And so it doesn't always have to be life-changing or world-changing role. It can be a really family-orientated role or a really personal role. But we need to feel like there's something to get us out of the bed in the morning more than just the fact that, life is there and we could do something with it today. We need to know what we want to do effectively.
So, and I call the people that listen to this lazy overachievers because they want to make sure that they can use our ideas and things that we've done or we've found or seen in our clients to be able to make their lives better today, easier. So you take people for 2 days individually up into a mountain retreat. And what are some of the skills, and I don't want to take away all of your IP, but just what are some of the skills that you get people or activities that you get them to do to start to realize these things or look at their who am I or things? So what are some of the skills that you can, some of the people that are listening today could easily do just to start down the path so they don't get to a precipice moment?
Well, the first thing I get people to do, I mean, a lot of the work that I do is conversational because everybody's different, everyone's unique. So I don't have a program that I use when I do my retreats with people because I'm responding to what their needs are.
Perfect.
But the one thing that I do with everybody even before they come out is an exercise that just gets people to review where they are in 9 different areas of their lives. Their home, their finances, their friends, their recreation, their relationships, their contribution to the world, their personal growth, all these different areas. And kind of, I ask the question, where are you right now? In other words, if you were to say 10 out of 10, where would it be? And write a little bit of where they are in this moment in time, what they're doing, what they're living, what some of the frustrations might be, etc. And then I go, okay, well, subconsciously you knew what a 10 felt like when you said it was a 5 or a 4 or an 8 or whatever. So now, what would a 10 look like? What might be in that 10? And that's not to say that then becomes the goal. But one of the things that I find the most interesting when I'm working with people is looking at the gap between where they are and where they think a 10 might be. Because that often shows up some really interesting limitations in our thinking of what we think we can and can't create in life. And it's often those limitations that when you look at those, you can have the breakthrough moments of understanding about, well, who do I really want to be in the world? Because often we've held ourselves back because what we believe is or isn't possible in our world as it stands at the moment.
Jessica, when you've obviously don't give away the person or anything else, but what is one of those biggest disparities, one of those biggest gaps that you've seen on maybe what of the strands? Was it a home or was it a personal or self-awareness and what was kind of the idea around it that they thought that they were on a 1 and maybe it was a 10 was nirvana?
Yeah, good old nirvana. I think probably I've had a couple of people actually change countries in where they were living. And one of those people was, she lived outside of her own country for many, many years, thought she'd never, ever want to go back. And then realized that actually everything she really wanted was back in her own country by looking at all those different 9 areas of life, friends, family, career, all those things was actually back in her own country. And that was a huge thing because it was something that she said, she had this thing, I'm never going back there. And actually everything I want is back there. So why would I not go back? And she did. She made the huge change and, went halfway around the world and created what she really, really wanted in life. And that came from an old kind of prejudice of when she ran away from there, which was many years previously, and therefore had stayed in what I call the running away from mode, rather than realizing that what she was running away from wasn't actually relevant anymore because she changed in life. And so what she really wanted was to, so yeah, she changed countries, changed her whole life, literally, and went and created what she really wanted. So yeah, I've seen some very big changes with people.
Very cool. And you've written 2 books besides your co-authoring on the Retire Inspire. And so what were those 2 books based on, and what were some of the outcomes that, because we want to make sure that people know where else to read about you?
Cool. Well, the first book I wrote was a book called Remembering Perfection. And I wrote this book for 4 years. I lived in an Indian ashram.
Wow.
And I offered my kind of service in the ashram. I was there for 4 years. I was working in the speaker and teacher training department, training speakers and teachers all around the world, or helping being part of that team. And when I left the ashram and I came back to the real world, and the ashram is an incredibly intense experience because you're constantly looking at yourself and your own life and your own beliefs and all these kind of things. But you don't have to deal with any of the kind of everyday stuff of life, of paying the mortgage or getting a job or dealing with the world or living with people who don't have your same philosophy, because when you live in an ashram, you're surrounded by 400 other people at least who have the same philosophy. So I wrote the book Remembering Perfection because I'd learned some really interesting kind of spiritual principles about how to live life. And I thought, how do you live this in the world? It's easy in an ashram when you're everybody doing it, but how do you live it in the world? How do you see God in each other when somebody's really annoying the hell out of you? It's like, there's lots of things like that. And so that book actually started out as a journal, because I was like trying to figure it out. And then I got 80 pages into this journal and went, oh, I think I might be writing a book. And so then turned it into a book. So Remembering Perfection is about everyday inspiration for living spiritually. And it's about spirituality is not something separate. It's something that's totally integrated into your everyday life, and the different ideas and different principles of how to live that. So that's my first book. And then about, probably 8 years later, I wrote The Right T-Shirt, which is about kind of been there, done that, got the wrong one. What does it look like if you get the right one? And this is very much about, finding out the answers to who am I, finding out the answers to where you limit yourself in your life. And if you've been really successful at creating the wrong T-shirt, then you can be really successful at creating the right one when you know what the right one looks like. So it's got a series of exercises in that book that help you look at your values, look at your passions, look at all the things that kind of is in the terms of who am I in the second part of who am I, which is like, what is my purpose? What is my passion? How do my values get lived in my life? And so if you don't know what those are, then that book helps you identify all those. And that's the kind of thing I also look at with people when they come on retreat with me, because a lot of people have not looked at those particular questions. We live our values every single day, but we rarely put words to them and understand the motivation behind living particular values. So it kind of goes into those areas of life.
And so when people are doing this, is it a overall experience? So is there a lot of writing, a lot of talking, a lot of is there a quiet time? Is it, how do you find, is it based on each person individually?
There's a lot of talking, but I build in quite a lot of quiet time too, because I don't think we could talk all day. We're together, literally. People come out on the afternoon of the first day. We have 2 full days on retreat, and they go home on the morning of the 4th day. So what we tend to do is have a really intense morning together, which is all conversation, not so much written exercise. And then there's some chill out time in the afternoon. Somebody comes in, gives you a massage, that kind of thing, just to chill you out even more. And then we have another session early evening before we go out to dinner. But like I say, we're together the whole time except for those quiet times. So, there's a lot of conversation in that. And then the second day, although if it's a lovely weather, which it often is up in the mountains, we tend to go for a walk, because I think, when you have those incredible views, when you're up in the mountains, that shift of perspective on visually actually helps shift perspective inside too. So sometimes just going out in that amazing countryside, people kind of get a much bigger vision because they see, wow, this is huge. Therefore, maybe I could join that size in my life. And so they start thinking bigger, which is fantastic, because that's really where we're wanting to go.
Very cool. And so they come out with you and you guys disappear into the mountains. Yep. So what does somebody do for follow-ups after that? Or how does the program then work after they've gone away for 2 intensive cleansing days? What does it feel like when they get home and go back into real life?
Well, I've built in support for that, because I've seen other courses where people go away and they're on a high when they leave, and then they hit life and nothing happens because life takes back over. So I build in a minimum of 4 months ongoing support, which is by phone or Skype or FaceTime or whatever people want. And that is about taking steps, because the last thing we do on the last day of the retreat is to go, well, what's the next steps? These are all nice ideas, but we've got to turn ideas into actions. And throughout the retreat, I've actually taken, they can write notes if they want to, but I write a lot of notes, because I also create a retreat report, which is probably 15, 16 pages long by the end of the weekend, with everything we've talked about, because we've talked about so much that they're not going to remember all the conversations. So I kind of put enough in that report to just, prompt the memory and go, oh yeah, we talked about that. Oh yeah, we talked about that. And in there is a whole lot of action points that we've agreed throughout the 2 days. So the next steps, which is the last bit we do, is we pick maximum 3 of those action points to start as you go home. So you kind of go home and you start to integrate the new ideas straight away. And then as we go forward with the follow-on support, we start picking other ones of those action points. So it gradually starts to shift and change life. And also, one of the action points is always to read the notes at least 3 times a week, because that kind of repetition just really anchors those conversations and those new ideas. So there's a big support as you go forward to make sure that the ideas you came up with actually, start to be lived.
Wow. And so do you do, I thought it was on your website, do you do a little bit of stuff with horses?
I do. It's we have a retreat with another coach who's a friend of mine, and she's an equine assisted coach, and which is a process of horses are an absolute mirror to wherever you are. People always say, well, if you're really nervous around horses, they'll know, and they absolutely do. But they'll also know if you're in a bad mood. They'll also know that if you're hiding something, and they will literally reflect what's going on within you. And so we do a retreat where we have an aspect, we bring the horses in, not for all of it. A lot of it is a similar kind of work that I do anyway. But the horses just are there to just give a little extra insight into what's going on. And one person that was working with Lizzie, the equine assisted coach, she was like a very henpecked wife. And she had 3 horses in the corral. And one of the horses was bullying one of the small horses. And she didn't realize that she was really henpecked. She was in this kind of like situation for so many years within the family. And she was getting really upset with this horse that was bullying this tiny little mare. And, Lizzie said, kind of, well, what does that tell you? And she said it was like this light came on for somebody, and she was just went, oh my God, I'm the little mare who's being bullied. She went, mm-hmm. So horses are very fascinating in that role, in that they'll pick things up that you would never think they would, and they'll literally mirror it back to you.
That's awesome. No, it sounds like fun. Yeah, I'm a nervous person around horses, so yeah, they'd probably pick me apart.
They'll pick you apart anytime.
Mirror me well, I think. So what are some of your goals for this year? What do you have? Some goals, either new book or anything else like that? What are some of your goals for 2019-20?
2019-20, I have, personally for me, to carry on doing the retreats that I do. I kind of have been mainly focusing on those, and that's still my focus for the year. To do 15 retreats would be my kind of main work goal that I have. I've had an inkling of maybe writing again, because a lot of people, when I'm on retreat with people, I share quite a lot of my own personal life story, because it's it's indicative of some of the things that I'm talking about. And a lot of people say, particularly some of the weirder stories that I share, go, you should write a book. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll think about that. So that's kind of bubbling away in the background at the moment, of a book focused, not an autobiography book, but a book that teaches certain principles, but using the stories of my life as I kind of go through. So that's that. Another one is that I have a new horse, because I'm very much a horse person. And my personal goal this year is to have my horse fully schooled and trained by the end of the year. Well, not maybe fully, because that might be a bit of a big ask, but she's a lovely horse, but never been schooled, so she needs to learn a few manners in a nice way. And she needs to learn that there's another speed other than stop and fast. So we're trying to get a middle speed in there at the moment. So that's slowing her down. So those are my two kind of main things this year, is that carry on the work that I do, which I absolutely love doing, and helping people answer that who am I question and what do I want out of life. And yeah.
And so what are you reading or listening to right now it's either making you inspired or chilled out, or kind of more intrigued?
I'm reading a Martha Beck book at the moment, which I can never remember the title of. It's one of her recent ones, which is about running on the wild side, and really just kind of tuning into your own inner knowledge and your own inner guidance and listening to that. Intuition always fascinates me. I'm a great believer that if it comes to your attention, give it your attention. And so that whole thing of really just becoming more of yourself, those are the kind of books that really fascinate me. And I'm a great believer that we never stop learning. We're always on this journey, the journey that I kind of started right from the beginning of my life, and the different things I've done, and living in the ashram, and the spiritual principles that I kind of live to. I don't think that's an ending. I think it's a constant discovery. It's a constant, exploration of understanding. And I have a kind of a regular lesson that I read on a daily basis that just reminds me of the bigger picture of life. And so that for me is always a fascinating exploration, because I think who you are, as in the who am I, as in the I, as in the soul or the spirit or whatever you want to call it, is like, who am I and what am I doing on this planet? I think that's an interesting exploration to have. Cool.
And what bit of tech, either software or equipment or even entertainment stuff, is kind of changing your life or making it a little bit more fun right now?
I'm really not a tech person. I don't even have an online calendar. I have a pen and paper diary. So for me, what makes my life fun is being out in nature. I'm a nature girl.
Cool. That's awesome.
So yesterday, I went for this fabulous hike through this gorge. I mean, one of the things about living here in Spain is that we've got the most amazing kind of mountains. I'm right on the coast, so I've got the beach, so I swim all year round, even when it's freezing cold, but I've also got the mountains, which I hike in. So I'm happiest when I'm outside, which is one of the reasons I love doing my retreats in the mountains, because it's where I love to be. And I'm a great believer that when you're working, you need to be including your passions in your work. And my passions is working with people and helping them just, get the life they want to have, whatever that is for them, but also to be up in nature, up in the mountains. And that feeds my soul anytime.
Perfect. And then where can we find out more about you?
Got a website, JessicaMcGregorJohnson.com. Everything's on there. And if anyone's interested, they can just drop me a line.
Perfect. Okay. And then the one thing, so if somebody tunes in for the last minute of this and they want to we want to take them back to the beginning and make them rewind and start us over again, what is your top tip for everybody listening right now for their who am I or whatever else it is, what's your top tip for them to take away and then rewind and start over again so they can listen to the whole episode and have some fun with it?
Well, one of the things I often say is life is not a rehearsal. Make it every minute count. We're not supposed to put up with stuff. We're not supposed to live kind of half power. We need to live full power. And I've got my favourite quote of all that I can give you, which has a swear word in it, but you got to have it because it's in there, which is life is not a journey to the grave with the goal of arriving in a prettily preserved body, but rather to skid in sideways in a shower of gravel and party shards, loudly proclaiming and also exhausted, fuck me, that was brilliant.
That's cool. Very cool. So that is perfect. And Jessica McGregor Johnson, thank you very much for coming on Grow, Sell, and Retire and being part of the Lazy Overachiever group.
I love being a lazy overachiever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Grow, Sell, and Retire. For more information, tools, or to book one of our team members to work with your team, business, or to speak at your event or conference, visit bartdaltonconsulting.com or email contact@bartdaltonconsulting.com. Buy the book True Gravity on Amazon. If you want to work for the rest of your life, that is your business. If you don't, that is ours.